Okay, hello CFMA members. Thank you for joining us again for the Tax and Legislative Affairs update. I'm Rhonda Huismann with Crowe's construction practice, and I'm joined by the real star of the show, Jeff Kummer from Deloitte's policy group in Washington, DC. Hi, Jeff.
Morning, how are you doing?
Good. Good to be back with you again. A lot has happened, I think, in the last week and a half since we last spoke. So let's get right in. Share with us some of the things that you've seen changing with some of the different proposals and whatnot.
Sure. I think this is really kind of going back and tying to our earlier recording that we did about 10 days ago, and how this is, we've seen a discussion move away from increases in tax rates. Senator Sinema from Arizona has made it clear that she's not interested in voting for increases at marginal rates for individuals, capital gains and qualified dividend income, corporate rates, and that forced a recalibration of where Congressional Democrats look to find tax revenue in order to finance this tax and spending package that they've been working on for a while. And then kind of fast forwarding, we've just been continuing to see these negotiations between progressives and moderates within the House and the Senate, as well as deliberations between the House and Senate, trying to figure out a path forward where they can come up with a final sort of spending version that is around $1.75 to $1.8 trillion, of which about 1.5 of that is covered with tax increases. We have some new ideas on the table that we started to think about last week. We have a new high income individual surcharge. Once an individual taxpayer hits a $10 million threshold and then a $25 million threshold, there's a new, on the business side, there's a new corporate adjusted financial statement, income statement type min tax concept. And really the takeaway here is that when Congress can't look at doing rate increases, I mean, mechanically, Congress understands how that works. We as practitioners understand how that works. But when they're not really allowed to do that, they have to start pulling the threads on some of these new sort of envelope pushing concepts, like a corporate min tax based on book income, surcharge on high income earners. And that's going to create a lot of tension within the the tax return system, and as we try to figure out what these mean and how they impact us as taxpayers. So we kind of fast forwarded through into this week, and with these deliberations still continuing, the House is looking closer to perhaps trying to take a vote on that Build Back Better Act. We saw revised text released yesterday, so that updates the revised text that was released last week, and really kind of brings us up to the point where we are today, where Speaker Pelosi is trying to get a vote on the House floor, perhaps later this evening, on the Build Back Better Act. If she can, she'll then move to a vote on the bipartisan highway bill as early as tomorrow, and then that would clear it and move the bipartisan highway bill to the president for his signature. And the Build Back Better Act would then go over to the Senate, where they've already indicated they're going to have some issues and some concerns and some changes that they want to make, which is a little bit of a differing process. So politically, Speaker Pelosi to date has been saying her goal is to really pre-conference and pre-negotiate all of this, so that when the House actually votes on something, it's already worked out that Senate Democrats can accept it and that they're going to vote on it and clear it for the president. I think what we're seeing now is, because Speaker Pelosi has perhaps tired of some of the Senate Democrats' discussions and some of the pressure points, I think what she's kind of decided is we're just going to vote on something, and then the Senate is going to have to make changes to it, and then I think what will happen is ultimately the House will then accept that sort of Senate version of things. And we won't have a conference where we sort of work out differences. We'll just have to accept what the Senate does, because whatever the Senate sends back will be exactly what can pass, given that they need every single one of those 50 Democratic votes, and that the House will just have to take that and then vote on it and clear it for the president. But could be that we see something happen in the next 24 to 48 hours, or this doesn't happen for a variety of different political and procedural reasons, and then we end up seeing it get pushed off for a while. The House and Senate are not in session next week. They're in session the week before Thanksgiving, and then they're out the week of Thanksgiving. So if it doesn't happen the next day or two, then anticipate action perhaps as we get into that week prior to Thanksgiving.
Sure. Is there any early indication of what you might expect in the Senate version?
Well, so there's a few differing things that are being worked out. There's on the non-tax side, there's a debate around drug pricing programs and allowing Medicare to negotiate lower script drug prices with pharma companies in order to find some additional spending savings to help finance this package. There's issues related to immigration, paid family leave is another. So the House has put back 4 weeks of national paid family leave in this latest iteration of text released yesterday. Senator Manchin from West Virginia has already said that that's not his approach. That's not what he would like. And so, expect some pushback there. There's also on the tax side related to that $10,000 state and local tax deduction cap that exists today. The House version released yesterday would take that $10,000 limit and increase it for households to $72,500 for the next 10 years. So pretty dramatically increase the amount of state and local taxes that a household could deduct in a given tax year. On the other side of the Capitol, the Senate, you have Senator Sanders and Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey, who came out yesterday and said they believe that disproportionately benefits upper income taxpayers too much. And so what they would prefer to do is to take the cap completely off for taxpayers taxpayers that have $400,000 or less in AGI. So they're looking to sort of completely remove the state and local tax deduction limitation for lower income earners, $400,000 or less, and then just keep that $10,000 haircut literally in place for taxpayers above that. So how does this all get worked out? That's a good question, but that's one of the key tax issues that's under consideration right now.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to see this all play out. Well, many of the states are trying to come up with workworkarounds on that same
Exactly. All of the PET regimes that are coming into place, particularly New York. I know I've had experience with a lot of discussions related to the New York partnership entity tax.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that concept of some of the states and the impact there, Tuesday was a big day with some of the off cycle and as well as the New Jersey and Virginia elections that happened. How does that all play out and impact what's happening there in DC in terms of some of the reactions to that?
Yeah, so and that's a good question. I think what you're saying is first of all, perhaps not a surprise. There's a history of the Virginia governor's race. The party in the White House not being able to win that off-year governor's race that Virginia has every 4 years. So in some ways, Glenn Youngkin beating Terry McAuliffe is perhaps not a surprise. On the other hand, this is a state that President Biden won by 10 points just a year ago in the presidential election. And there has been a lot of talk. I live in Northern Virginia, so there's a lot of talk about what I call the sliver on the river, that sort of Alexandria Old Town all the way following the Potomac River, and how democratic that's become over the last decade or so. And yet Glenn Youngkin won this race fairly comfortably with broad polling across the state. And then that coupled with a narrow loss by the Republican candidate in New Jersey. And I think what you're seeing now is a National Democratic Party that obviously is concerned. Elections are next year. The party in the White House historically doesn't do well in midterm elections. So already a lot of concern. I think different groups, different factions, Democratic Party are seeing what they want to see. So if you're a progressive, you say, well, Terry McAuliffe was a bit of a flawed candidate. He is a centrist Democrat. He's a Clinton White House veteran. He's not really our kind of Democrat. And so he lost for that reason. More moderate members are saying the inability of Congress to act on a bipartisan highway bill, the fact that the president's approval ratings are down, all of these factors should make us very nervous about voting for a tax and spending package that we're considering right now, and make us pretty worried about our midterm election prognosis going into November of next year. I think all of that is probably a little right. I think also Glenn Youngkin managed to, run a local race that had national implications in Virginia and was successful doing that. So some of this has implications nationally. Some of it is just I think a set of factors that were unique to this time and this year and to the candidates themselves, and don't really maybe replicate themselves more broadly. But what that is doing now to our discussions today is I think it's forcing Speaker Pelosi's hand to try to get votes on this Build Back Better Act today. Because if they leave town and members go home and hear for a week about all of the different issues and problems and concerns with this tax and spending package, some of those moderates might come back after a week and say, I have some real doubts about this. This is going to have to be redrafted significantly. We're going to have to change some of these tax increases, some of these spending priorities in here. We're going to have to adjust all of this in order to reflect what I think my voters are telling me. So I think she's trying to get a vote quickly and before some of that pushback occurs, because again, all the focus on the Senate, 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans. But as I think I mentioned on our previous podcast, is that the House, the Democratic majority of the House is also very narrow. Speaker Pelosi can only afford to lose 3 members and still pass this. So all these different competing interests and competing factions, I think, are continuing to play out. But as far as sort of the races on Tuesday, I think it's all kind of in the eye of the beholder. I think different differing factions of Democrats are seeing what they want to see and are taking their instructions and their marching orders from that.
Oh, that's good. Thank you for that commentary. I think that's helpful and add some color to the discussion. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, I guess, as things play out for the rest of the day here. We could be coming back maybe pretty quickly with another call and another update, or it could be maybe a week out once they reconvene. So thanks for that, Jeff. And viewers, stay tuned. We'll be back when there's more to report. So thank you for tuning in. Thanks, Jeff.
Yep, thank you. Take care.